Finished our first day of testing on the 2022 Honda CRF450R. Mapping issues are no longer there. This bike is crazy fast. So it's always nice to have the option with different maps for different riders for different styles. The first map we'll talk about will be the standard map. That map works for a variety of people. It worked the best for all of the test riders. Then you have the aggressive map. Hits really hard for a guy that wants to feel that power, that arm jerking power. Then you have the least aggressive map that is kind of the other way of the standard map, that is just a smooth kind of ride around power. The bike still has power in that particular map. It's just not as aggressive when it hits. That's a really nice thing. Honda has their traction control. Some people really like it, some people don't like it at all, but it does make a difference. If you're riding on a track that's maybe blown out and really slippery, throwing the traction control on there and putting it in the standard map might make it a little bit more controllable for you. Some people don't like it because it feels like it chokes the bike up a little bit more. If you actually do lap times, you can see minor differences in those lap times depending on how the rider rides and how in control they are. But there is differences on those things. Like I said, for some people, it's a good thing. For some people, they don't want anything to do with it. The new hydraulic clutch is easy to pull, have really good feel with it. Suspension wise, the bike has a little bit more balance and a little bit more hold up. We still think that going to a stiffer rear spring is going to help as well, and we will probably do that down the road, and then maybe some other mappings to dial it in. But other things that we did do to this motorcycle, put the forks almost flush in the triple clamps to kind of get more stability out of it. This bike turns on a dime. You don't have to really work on turning this motorcycle. You kind of look somewhere and it wants to go there. The other thing is we tightened down the headstay nut to make it not be so free moving in the front, so we're not chasing that front end feel. We did go stiffer all the way around. For a rider that is on the gas really hard and sitting down a lot, kind of preloading stuff, you notice the seat really quickly, that it kind of gets soft right off the bat. But for a guy that's standing up and using his legs to do a little bit more of the shock absorbing, the bike does work really well. Another thing we noticed when trying different suspension settings on the 2022 model is this bike is really sensitive to clickers. Some bikes you might have to go 4 or 5 clicks in or 4 or 5 clicks out to feel something. This bike, a couple clicks will get you there. Naturally, when we are testing, we do kind of do those extreme things, but for your personal testing, you might want to take what you would normally do and do maybe half of that. You know, you might get a bigger reaction than what you're thinking. This bike is also very sensitive to sag. We're finding out that a lot of the newer 450s, they want to run a little bit more sag in the rear. Like instead of being up around 99 or 100, these bikes like to be in around the 104 to 108 section. It makes the bike kind of feel a little bit more planted in the rear. A couple other things that we've come across doing testing on the 2021 models of both the RX and the R model. In this video, we have test rider Justin Jones, who is 6 foot plus, so he's definitely on the taller side. He runs a taller seat because he feels like the straight up and down compartment of the rider cockpit is a little cramped. He doesn't move the bars forward in the clamps because he feels like, you know, that way wise the bike has a roomy feel. And keep an eye on the map switch slash traction control switch. It's really susceptible to damage in a crash. It's also, you know, when you're washing your bike, it gets water in there and all that stuff. We have had a few times to where the bike was throwing out some weird codes and then we blew that thing off and it started running fine again. That's definitely something to keep an eye on. If you paid attention to some of the factory teams, they're not running those. So there's one map in the bike, there's a kill switch on the bike, and they go from there. So not sure if that's what it has to do with it, but that's something that we found in testing. Now, we didn't have any of those issues on the first day of testing on the 2022 model, but that's just stuff that we want to fill you in, let you know what's going on, something to keep an eye out for down the road. Again, this is our first day of testing on this motorcycle. Justin Jones is actually going to ride the last couple nationals on our test bike. He's not planning on changing a lot to this motorcycle. It has an enormous amount of power. Generally, the bike's gonna stay pretty close to the same, so we'll see how he does. As always, head over to dirtbikemagazine.com for the latest in off-road and motorcycle industry news. If you got a little bit more time on your hands and want to see some tests on some other 2022 450 models, click the video thumbnail now. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all of our latest releases.